Yo, what's up YouTube? Today we are going over my Zeus build on max roll. We'll be going through the full skill tree. I'll be giving you my takes on what to take here, but things are definitely suggestible. You can go ahead and choose what you'd like, but I feel like it's going to be the most optimal way of achieving this sort of build. There are a few points here and there that you can allocate to wherever you want to kind of change this up a bit if you don't feel like you need like ordnance and stuff like that. But yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and get into this. Most of you probably already know what whip and shield does. You'll be able to gain a shield which will take frontal damage. That frontal damage becomes vengeance and then fills up a meter, and then once that's filled, you'll get damage reduction instead, and it rapidly decreases as you're not getting your stacks up. We'll get into these in here in a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and take off here. Yeah, so Wrath of Nature, Amon gains increased status effect application chance and cryo efficiency. The thing we're not really going for here is cryo efficiency. We're going for that application chance, and this gets doubled when our action skill is active. So you'll actually get around, if it works the way I think it does, about 25% and then 50% when it's active, which is gonna be really nice for getting a shock off. Then Amon gains increased action skill duration and gun swap speed. Gun swap speed is just really nice in a pinch, especially fight or flight. You can kind of swap your weapon if you're in the need of it, which will then give you just around 33%. But the main thing is action skill duration, which will give you an overall 20% if it stacks the way I think it does. Now here we get down here to Mechanist. Mechanist is going to be good to get your ordnance up and be able to use your rocket launchers, big LMGs, grenades, stuff like that. This can definitely be swapped with something later on if you want to, but if you don't, if you like the way this works, just rock with it. I kind of have an idea why this would work. If the other things work the way I don't think they're going to work, it'll be explained in a little bit. But we'll go over here to Warrior's Cup. This is a really good one too. Whenever you use your repair kit while your action skill is active, you get a partial restore. It partially restores your duration, which will actually give you just about 30% in duration back. So that's something that's really nice. You can definitely take points out of this, put it into here, but you'll have 1 point to kind of spend around here if you want to, or you can toss it down here. But honestly, we'll get into that later. I don't really feel it's needed that you need the full 5 here. But yeah, we'll go ahead and go down here. We'll grab this kill skill called Thunderous Rage. Killing an enemy with shock damage grants you a stack of shock affinity for a duration. These stacks increase your critical hit damage, but the primary thing here isn't the critical hit damage. Yeah, it's nice, but these stacks of shock affinity are what's going to be really important. I'm hoping that this actually increases your amount of stacks that you get. If not, I would actually put 4 points into Blackout. It gives your ordnance damage a chance to critically hit and shock enemies when they do. But if not, and you actually get the full stacks here, then you get more stacks, and this would be more often the best case scenario for this one, all 5. Coming down here, whenever Amon deals action skill damage, he consumes a stack of shock affinity to cause an electrical bolt or an elemental bolt to strike that enemy, dealing shock damage. Now this goes all the way up to 62% at 5 or 50% at 4. Honestly, I think the 50% is more viable, so you can get into other skill trees later on, as we'll talk about. But yeah, 50% more damage is really nice. Also, on top of this, the elemental bolt now staggers and consumes an additional stack. That's why I'm kind of hoping this gives you more stacks, but this will give you a damage multiplier on it of 200%. Now you won't be able to stagger bosses, but for crowd clearing, this is going to be what you need. Smelter will be a kill skill. Amon restores a percentage of his forge skill cooldown all the way up to 15% chance per kill. This will allow you to be able to use Wrathfall more often. I'm pretty sure it doesn't affect this. I'm pretty sure it just affects the Wrathfall. Now we'll go ahead and get into these. We're giving you Storm Lance. Storm Lance is an action skill that replaces your whip and dealing shock ordnance damage on impact, consuming vengeance to increase damage dealt. Enemies damaged by the forged spear are primed for a detonation and will detonate when they are damaged by a forged skill, dealing shock damage to the target but not nearby enemies. Detonations can also be caused by gun critical hits but deal less damage. This effect can stack. So this will be really nice. So basically the idea here is you're going to be hitting people with these spears, priming them, and then doing a big sweep to detonate them. So now that we better understand what's going on here in this skill tree, rocking shock more often, getting our duration up, getting stacks of shock affinity to get these bolts to hit enemies, getting a 200% multiplier from it while also staggering enemies, and getting our cooldown back for our forge skill. That way we can get Wrathfall back quicker so we can start detonating the enemies. Then going over here, we're going to go to our green tree. This is all pretty self-explanatory. Gathering Storm, kill skill. Amon deals increased elemental damage for a duration this effect can stack, going from 10% per layer up to 30% maximum. You get an extra 30% elemental damage. Destruction Engine. Amon gains an increased forge skill damage and detonation damage, up to 20% damage in forge skill and 30% damage to detonation. This works really well with Stormlance and Wrathfall. Then we come over here and we grab Herald's Call. Amon gains increased shock damage up to 25%, pretty standard. And then now we go over to the red tree. In the red tree, we're picking up 3 in Impetus, which gives us another kill skill. Amon gains increased shield regeneration and movement speed. This will give you a movement speed of 8 and then a 15% more shield recovery per layer, which will equal to 45% more shield recovery, which is really nice. Now, the reason we got this skill is because later on, it's going to help us get to other points we want once we get a level increase, which we'll talk about now. Now for this section, we are just going to be theory crafting for a level increase of another 23 points. This stuff gets pretty in depth on how it synergizes together, and it's really cool. So if it's something you're interested in, stick along, but if not, you can kind of end it here. So if you're done here, thanks for watching. I appreciate it if you stuck it out this long. Hope to see you in the next one, but if not, let's continue. I assumed 72 points for prior Borderlands games. As we already have our 3 points in here, we only need to put 2 more in here to get to the next level. So I'll put 2 points into heavy plate. This is just going to give us more shield capacity and super shield capacity. Mostly just kind of a filler, but it's also nice to have. So Master the Storm, increase Amon status effect damage and duration. This will increase status effect duration by 25% and increase your status effect damage by 25%. So it means enemies are going to be shocked for 25% longer and adding to just more elemental damage. The most important one, the reason why we're really going down this skill tree, is the getting momentum. Momentum is really nice. This is going to, whenever Amon deals the gun damage, he gains increased action skills cooldown rate. So once we're out of it and we want to get back into it, getting gun damage out, and it stacks up to 20 times. So this actually gets pretty crazy. We'll be able to basically always be in our, well, spear and shield combo here. So this will actually give you I'm believing at max stacks it's going to increase by 0.5 each layer, each level. So this will get you up to about 2.5%. And then at max stacks, at 20 stacks, this is going to give you a 50% action skill cooldown rate, which is going to be really nice in order to ensure that we stay in this spear and shield combo. Now that we have done with this red tree, the next thing we're going to go is we're going to move into the green tree again. We're actually going to come over here and we're actually going to put 5 points into Blast Furnace. Whenever Amon or his forge drones, the key word here is Amon, because we're not really going to be using the forge drones unless you want to. And in that case, if you want to use these forge drones, and you can actually come over here and pick up Blade Tempest, you can look a little more into this. Basically, you throw the blades directly at them, priming them for detonation, that sort of thing. But we're actually going to come over here and put 5 points into here, allowing Amon, whenever he critically hits an enemy, it causes the detonation, and he gains increased damage dealt for that duration. Detonations grant multiple stacks, up to 30, which is really huge. So I'm expecting that the damage caused is going to go up rather than the stack duration or anything like that. I think we're going to keep the max 30 stacks here, because this will actually increase it once we get 5 points, which will actually be 1.25 per layer and it stacks up to 30 times. So this is going to give us a 37% more damage dealt, which is going to be really nice, which is why we chose to go into the ordnance here. And hopefully, I know it sounds crazy, but hopefully if this works the way I think it does, we won't get more stacks out of this. It'll just increase the critical damage per layer. We'll actually put the 4 points into here, grab the 1 point for the static shock affinity duration, the static shock affinity, and then we'll be getting this ordnance damage causing shock damage with our, like, say for instance, a big, like, you know, electrical LMG. And then so on top of that, it's going to, whenever you do critical hit, you're going to be able to detonate these enemies, stacking up to doing more damage, right? And then the next part here, which is really nice, Amon's gunshots have a chance on critical hit to spawn elemental bolt, dealing shock damage. So if you remember elemental bolt earlier, right? So this brings down the stacks, bring up an elemental bolt, right? But elemental bolt now staggers enemies and consumes an additional stack of shock affinity, right? So if you got these shock affinities stacked up, right, from doing shock damage, this doesn't specify that you have to use it by getting this, right? You're going to be getting these stacks up by just doing raw shock damage alone by itself, right? You increase your critical hit rate. These bolts are going to do 200% more multiplier and stagger enemies. We won't be getting access to strike the animal unless we are in this, but we will get access to high voltage. So then when we come back over here, all of our normal gun damage and stuff will be causing these elemental bolts, staggering enemies and dealing like shock damage to everyone. So this is gonna be something that's really nice. It's got an 8-second cooldown. I'm not sure how this is, I didn't sure how to calculate this, because spawn rate 25%, that might go up to maybe 50% or so, and or it might decrease the cooldown. Not too sure. I think the elemental thunder damage might stay the same. I might be wrong about that. We'll have to see once we, you know, get into it when the game drops. But this right here is amazing. Just these right here. So this allows, you know, it allows it all to synergize together. This is the next level cap increase or couple. I'm not too sure. I kind of assumed levels like 72 points from like Borderlands 2 at max level and things like that. I have a feeling this is going to be played more like Borderlands 2 than it's going to be like Borderlands 3, hopefully. But so yeah, so I think that this is how it'll work. So yeah, that's kind of the idea of having to go for this. It's like, you know, you're running around, you're getting your movement speed up, you're running around, you're hitting enemies with your storm lance, and then you're hitting with that, priming them for detonation, and then sweeping the area, detonating all of them while getting critical hits, causing them enemies to detonate anyway, and getting these elemental bolts to start hitting enemies, staggering everybody, and, you know, getting them knocked down. Something that I would like to get in this, especially going on the ordnance tree route, is maybe gut punch, because applying weakness to enemies is something that'd be really great. But I think the way it works right now, you know, you're just, you know, storm caller, you're just bringing bolts of lightning from the sky, you know, like Zeus. And I think that's just really cool. So yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this little breakdown in theory crafting. I'll be updating the max roll here, letting y'all know what, you know, as it progresses, and as I play, I'll be updating the skill tree by what's, you know, more viable or not. Yeah, I think what we have here will be pretty viable for the early game. So yeah, if y'all got this far in the video, I really appreciate you, and I hope to see you over on Twitch. So yeah, I'll be live Wednesday through Sunday on Twitch. If you want to stop by on launch, I'll be doing 12-hour streams. And if you've made it this far, I appreciate you, and I hope to see you there. Peace.